Hey, Kitty, thank you for coming in today to share your insights with our audience. Your work is just amazing and marvelous and outstanding. And I should mention to the audience, this is like last minute ad hoc. I was just having a conversation with Kitty and I said, we got to get an interview done. So thank you, Kitty, for taking the
Thank you.
time to share your insights.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for talking with me and for taking that quick action, Stephen.
So Kitty, my audience, in fact, I actually measure who listens to my interviews, right? And the top five positions are co-founder, CEO, founder, board member, and president. And then underneath that would be things like professor, engineer, and so on. And there's investors, and there are most co-founders and founders or CEOs are investors as well. So it's really a kind of a kind of very senior audience, but also I get tech enthusiasts in there and scientists. So keep that in mind. But my audience is always curious. You're doing this wonderful work. What were those inflection points in your life? Maybe it was something that happened when you were 3 or 4 years old. It could have been later. It could have been in school, maybe a friend or family member, something that happened early in your career, maybe two or three things that really shaped you to who you
Yeah.
are today.
Um, the first business that I started, I was young. I was about 22. I grew up in Chicago, and I was a commercial real estate appraiser. And this is a long time ago, but at that time, um, uh, for residential real estate, you had the MLS to find comparable sales to do your valuation analysis. But for commercial, there was no such thing. So people would, myself and all the other commercial real estate appraisers, would literally drive to the assessors, to tax assessors' offices, and flip through these things called green sheets, which are deed transfer documents, and stand there and write down like this property sold for this much, things like that. And I was doing this week after week, and I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. How can there not be like a better solution here? What about a database? And so I hired a bunch of people, sent them to the assessor's offices every week. We built a database, and then we created a subscription service for appraisers, lenders, tax professionals, things like that. And that was it. I was hooked on both the idea of looking at a problem and trying to find a tech-based way to solve it, but also mechanizing something that was currently not very automated or was super clunky. And of course, running my own company, it was really hard, and I didn't know anything. I mean, I really did not know anything. And so I ran it for about 8 years, and I ended up selling it to a company that was doing something similar and rolling up businesses doing the same thing across the country. And so I think in terms of my career path, that was probably the most important experience that I had, because I was just completely hooked by every single piece of that, including how hard it was and doing something that hadn't been done, and all the sort of excitement and terror of bootstrapping a business like that. I do not come from money. I mean, I was the definition of bootstrapping that business. So that was a very big deal, I think, for me. And then later worked in a business that was in the syndicated market research world that I found really fascinating. A company called Jupiter, in the sort of original internet go-go days, right back in like the 90s, late 90s. They were kind of the Gartner of internet businesses. Worked with just an absolutely brilliant team. Took it public. They were incredible. That was a wildly exciting and fantastic experience, which went like this, and then the internet hit the wall and it dropped like a stone, like everybody else's business. That was a hugely formative part of my life, because we grew the business, and then we got hammered like everybody else did, and I spent about a year helping to sort of sell off the parts of the business. And that was really, I was on the wrong end of serial due diligence for about 18 months with sort of one potential acquirer after another. So that was really hard, but I learned so much about business in general and about um, looking at opportunities through a more skeptical lens. At that time, no one was skeptical about anything because everything was going bananas. And many of us, in that world should have been more skeptical because looking back, there was no way it was going to continue to be the way that it was. And then without a question of a doubt, this business has been the most interesting, the most impactful, the most meaningful. I spent my whole career, 25 years, running tech companies and startups and data companies. That's where I've been living. And at least for me as an entrepreneur, you try to find product market fit. Can I come up with something that someone wants to buy? And then can I get the timing right? Is the thing that I made presenting itself at the right moment such that it is viable? And then the home run is always like, can I have an impact? Can I do something that will really make a difference in people's lives? And this business is every single one of those things, especially the impact side. And it has been so difficult, but the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And I only hope that we can do all the things that we imagine, and that later I can help other entrepreneurs, other companies, help support them through that early part. It would be so easy to give up, but so important that you don't.
So what I'm hearing is you have this theme running in your life as a serial entrepreneur, and you're very innovative, but you're also have this entrepreneurial mindset. Did you get that entrepreneurial mindset from the neighborhood you lived in, or early friends you have, or was it in your family, or are you still like an outlier and it's just you? Or
I think it's just me. I didn't really have a lot of entrepreneurial exposure growing up, and my mom used to kid around with me that the other kids were whatever, playing cops and robbers or whatever games they were playing. I was playing Office. We had office supplies and a stapler, and that's what I was doing. Apparently it's sort of woven in to me. But it's been without a question, it's where I always turn. There have been a few times in my life where I've gotten a job offer and I think, Kitty, just once, could you just take the job and just make some money and just like go do the easy version? Like, why do you have to go start a company? And why can't you just, and I can't. I've done it a couple times and I was miserable, and I finally figured out it's not for me. So it's in there somewhere and I can't seem to get rid of it.
Well, this entrepreneurial spirit, this innovation spirit, did you then have early encounters with the entrepreneurship organization, which is really sort of focused on entrepreneurs, or ones like there's one called YPO, Young Presidents Organization? Are you a member of those organizations, or people from those organizations? Do you have an interaction with those organizations or similar ones?
I didn't, and I don't honestly know why I never kind of took advantage of wonderful networks like that. I don't know why. Looking back, I have plenty of friends who did, and they're wildly successful, and I have so much respect for everything that they've done, but somehow or another, it just never intersected with my path. And so I didn't. I kept just sort of doing it myself and trying to figure out. I have wonderful partners and a wonderful network, but I never had that kind of a formalized set of relationships, which I know would have benefited me tremendously. But it just never seemed to sort of appear at the right time. And I was always so focused on what I was doing that I never went and looked outside that to try to get that extra help.
So I'm hearing this series of startups that you've been involved with, like how many up to, let's say, 2 to 3 years ago, and then where are you today?
Yeah, I think it's 6 or 7 over the years. A couple times I was hired by either a founder or a VC looking to bring a very kind of sales and product focused CEO into the business. Several of them were my own. And doing various things, as I said, in tech or in data for the most part. And some much smaller and more sort of flailing, and others that did really well, a really mixed bag. I think, like everybody who tries to do several different things, plenty of failure, and a couple of successes.
And now what are you doing now?
So today I run a company called Resonance, and we're an artificial intelligence, machine learning company focused on healthcare. When we founded the business 3.5 years ago in March of 2020, our thesis was that we could build a software-only, artificial intelligence-powered diagnostic platform that uses only the sound of a person's cough, an intentional cough, to render a diagnosis. And we did this. It was, March of 2020. COVID had just turned into, had exploded and started screwing with everything and everyone all over the world. And that was the impetus for starting the business. We said, what could we do? Is there something we could do to help? So we saw at that time that the National Science Foundation had an emergency call out for innovative technologies related to COVID. And so we thought, well, we got to try. So we wrote up a pitch as per their requirements, and we submitted it. I remember I submitted it on a Saturday evening at 8:15 p.m. Because of course I have no social life. This is what I do all day long. And so at 8:30, I got a response back from the gentleman who became our program director through NSF. And he said, please go to full proposal. And we thought, wow, okay. And we did. That was the first time I had attempted any kind of government, funding award. And so it took us about a month to sort of figure all that out. That's a whole thing unto itself. And we got our proposal submitted, and we thought from the beginning, this is a moonshot. We probably won't be able to do this, but we got to try. And we agreed that we had to try, because if it worked, it would matter. So we submitted the proposal, and we thought probably won't get it. Thousands of proposals went in at that time. We saw press about it. And a couple months later, we ended up getting a phase 1 SBIR grant from NSF. And that was really the very beginning, because that let us stand up our first data science team. That let us begin in, for real, this process. And it's been a crazy journey since then. But that was the beginning. I'm not a data scientist. I'm not an AI expert by any means. I know our AI really well, but you could plot me in another world of AI and I probably wouldn't be very helpful. But I do understand the power of technology and thinking about doing things in a different way. And we want to change the way that diagnostic services are delivered and experienced by consumers, non-invasive, scalable, technology-oriented. And so that was the mission, and it is now heading toward what I could only at that time have dreamed it would do. And I'm beyond thrilled about where we are at this point.
So you use some acronyms. So this interview is global. So some people won't know what SBIR means, right? So can you explain SBIR? So
SBIR is within the U.S. government, some of the type of funding that is available, these awards or grants that you can get. And it's a small business, it's meant to help early stage and kind of innovation oriented kinds of technology development. and National Science Foundation, which is the originating entity that we worked with, is, really well known for doing incredible things, and fostering some of the most interesting technologies, and giving them kind of a start, a leg up. And so it's just a particular kind of grant that we got. It was not a huge amount of money. It was only about $250,000, but we made really good use of it. We were very judicious with the money, and did some, got those original models and got our original concept, the prototype built, and knew that we sort of looked at it and said, if this thing is actually working, we better figure out all the other steps to getting this to market.
So what I'm hearing then is there's these markers that when a person coughs, that audio part can be classified, and certain conditions can be detected just from machine learning, right? The application of machine learning. It's almost like having biomarkers in your cough.
It is.
And what are the advantages? To me, I think, wow, non-invasive. It could be inexpensive. It could scale.
Yeah.
Can you summarize what are the benefits of something like that?
Yes. Yeah. So you definitely hit on it. So non-invasive. So the idea of being able to get a test without a swab up your nose, which everyone learned far too much about throughout this COVID pandemic. Fully sort of software based. So the way our technology works is you cough into a mobile app, and that app sends your cough to the cloud where all the magic takes place, all the logic and compute and processing, and then sends the result back to the mobile app. So our interface is an app. And if you think about that model, the idea is that certainly non-invasive, but no manufacturing, no consumables. There's no supply chain to mess with our ability to kind of get this product out there. No waste, which is meaningful in lots of parts of the world. Our tests don't expire. They're literally, bits and bytes. Our tests never run out of stock, and it's extremely easy to distribute our tests. So we built a system called Test Hub that lets you buy a bunch of tests in quantity if that's what you want to do, and email them to whoever you want to receive the test. They can then download the app. The tests are waiting for them, take the test, and get their test result. So you cough, in about 2 minutes, you get your result. It's on your phone. It's already in your purse or your pocket. You have to go anywhere or buy anything. And critically, we can process about 20,000 tests per second. So for us, this had to be insanely scalable. When we think about what's to come for all of us, the next pandemic, I hope we've learned some important lessons from COVID, but there will be another. And this ability to rapidly deploy tests and be able to process thousands and thousands and thousands of tests an hour is important. We also built the system to directly connect to public health. So when our test gets approved, we're under review right now with FDA and with Health Canada, and we'll be bringing our tests to a number of other countries. When we get a positive on our platform, it automatically gets sent via a group called APHL, which is the Association of Public Health Labs. It automatically gets sent to the appropriate public health jurisdiction in the US, so that they get an immediate notification that there's been a positive test for the two tests we have today are for tuberculosis and for COVID. And so they can do what they need to do. They're experts at managing public health and outbreaks like this. So that's the other advantage is, this is automatically being able to be reported in near real time so that the people who know what they're doing in the world can react and put resources into place and try to tamp down any obvious outbreaks and try to assist and put help and resources in those places. So we think that this combination of fast, scalable, non-invasive, and inexpensive. Because we don't have manufacturing or consumables, our cost of goods to process a test is pennies. So we can price our tests very aggressively and still be profitable on a unit basis, and make this available to everyone. You really only need a smartphone and an internet connection to take a proper diagnostic test that could be a real health problem for you. Thinking of COVID and TB, which are the two we've completed and are having reviewed now, and we're working on flu and RSV. And so thinking about places in the world where there is no public health infrastructure, there are no testing facilities, you might be far away from any kind of clinical care. And so the opportunity to put this in the hands of anyone with a smartphone that's what I mean about impact and difference. Like we're as mission driven a business as you can find. Fundamentally, we're going to be very profitable. Everyone's going to make plenty of money, but it's going to be a very important business to the health of lots and lots of people.
Yeah, and because you can scale it, and AI is not decreasing in capability, it's increasing in capability. So I can see the accuracy going up over time.
Absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
the field is just getting better and better.
That's
and
right.
the scaling, I mean, most people have phones. The majority of the world now has phones, right? So, so that accessibility is there. Increasing accuracy is there. And your tech stack, it's in the cloud, and there's a lot of resources going into the cloud. Is it Microsoft Azure or?
Yep, we're Microsoft Azure. We're Microsoft from top to bottom. We were fortunate enough to get invited into the Microsoft for Startups program.
Oh.
So we got wonderful benefits from that. And we have utilized really everything. There's these function apps in Azure that are so important to kind of the way that we created our production environment for processing. And we have really invested in learning that platform as well as we possibly can and getting the very most out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I could see you should be showcased at Microsoft Build or something.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's such a marvelous story, and the potential is endless, right? Because you're looking at other diseases that have some kind of respiratory signature, right, and then you can go after all of them, right? It's just training your
exactly
algorithms.
It's data, so we live in this weird world where we want to go collect coughs from people who have been diagnosed with some disease so that we can train up a new set of models. That's what we do. And the more data, as you know, with AI, the more data you have, the better it is, period. And so that's always our challenge, is how can we go get more data on one disease after another so that we can effectuate more tests. And of course, this is a pretty difficult problem. So this idea of using AI classifiers to detect a specific disease signature in a cough sound is a very difficult problem. And a lot of people have worked on this over the last 5-10 years and done brilliant work, I have to say. There have been some incredible advances by, MIT and Cambridge and, venerable organizations that have done brilliant work. And so we're doing things a bit differently than what we've seen. We did kind of a comprehensive literature search a year and a half or so ago, and there were at least 48 groups or organizations or entities that had started on this specific to COVID. And so we sort of looked at what they were doing. We've taken a different path than what we've seen anybody else do, and we think that's why the progression with this kind of work is, first you have to see if you can get some models to do this at all. Yeah. If you can get them to work on a small data set, you have to see if you can get it to generalize. Can you point them at unseen data and get them to perform as well? Then you have to, because this is a medical device, even though it's software, it's considered software as a medical device. It's a SAMD. Most regulatory bodies around the world consider us to be a SAMD. And so you have to have a regulatory pathway. You have to go find what a regulatory body will require from you. You have to conduct clinical trials, incredibly rigorous technical documentation in the form that regulatory bodies are accustomed to reviewing. And then you have to have a commercialization plan, because none of this matters if you can't find a way to put it in the hands of people who want to buy it, and price it properly and get the economics of processing and selling and all of that to work. So there are so many kind of gates that you have to get through in order to get in front of this opportunity to put a product into the market. And we've seen so much great work be done, often by kind of academic or research organizations that end their work by saying, well, this is very promising, someone should really commercialize this. And then they just walk away. And I'm a capitalist, so I'm like, why would you do that? Why wouldn't you take it the rest of the way? I appreciate how hard it is, but so the technology, the regulatory, and the commercialization, you've got to get all of that to work together, and it's hard. It's a very difficult problem.
There is these innovation challenges, like the AI for Good, which is hosted out of the ITU in Geneva, have an innovation factory. So it's an open platform. You'll get all sorts of publicity for entering, and they have a regional or regular events about every 2 to 3 weeks or something. I mean, I could see this doing well within that. That
would be
program.
fun. Yeah.
So that's just a fascinating journey. Is this the most exciting of all? I guess it's hard to say one of your startups is more exciting than another, but this one must be interesting to you, really, because you can change the world with this one, right?
Yeah, it's unquestionably the most exciting by far of anything I've done. And I've had a ton of fun working on really cool projects and all of that. But this has a degree of meaning, and we continue to. I know a lot of people think COVID is over. It's not over, and COVID is going to continue to mess with us for a long time to come. And even if that's all we did was COVID, I would be really proud of what we accomplished. But we knew from the beginning that the next step we wanted to take was tuberculosis. It's such a terrible disease. It is so difficult to test and treat, and the community, the global TB community, which we've just started working with more and more folks in that community over the past 8 months or so, is so remarkable. So many people and groups and organizations and entities have been working together for 20 years to try to address this illness, help people. It doesn't, in wealthy countries like the US, it's, we get about 8,000 TB cases a year in the US. So it's a very little impact. But in high burden TB countries, it's a terrible scourge. And so being able to impact that disease with the tools that we've developed, that we're about to submit our de novo filing for our TB test here in the US, and then we'll be bringing it out to a number of international organizations to do some live validation testing, so that we can meet the criteria that WHO has set forth for a TB screener. TB is also a very complicated disease to diagnose. There are many steps. There's what we seek to be is an initial stage that says this is likely active TB. But then you need to do imaging, and you typically need to do a sputum culture and microscopy, and sometimes PCR testing and blood testing. So there's skin, we use PPD testing here in the US. So there's many steps. And that's part of the problem with TB is it's so hard to test. There's a person has to go through so many stages, which can take a long period of time to definitively diagnose it, that so many people fall out of the process. They don't have time to be, going back. And so if we can help at the beginning and at least find the people that are active TB positive and get them into the remainder of that diagnostic process more readily with partners that we're starting to work with that do AI-based imaging, mobile, so you don't have to go anywhere. You can do mobile imaging. These are the kinds of solutions that are going to change the way healthcare works. And so, being part of that, when I look at the amount, I'm speaking at a symposium in London next month for TB, and I look at the work that these people have spent their lives focused on for TB. Just to be part of that is so meaningful. So there's nothing I've ever done that will ever be as interesting as this.
Well, it's just a remarkable journey. And do you have any final recommendations to the audience?
For entrepreneurs, if you can possibly do it, try that moonshot. Try. And I think, as I said, so many times in the last 3.5 years, I thought, well, boy, I don't know if we're going to be able to pull this off for one reason or another. It was never the science, though. I never disbelieved in the science. I never thought the science that our team couldn't get the science to work. I thought, well, we won't be able to get the money, or we won't be able to get the regulatory approval, or this or that. There were hurdles, but we believed, and it sounds so trite and corny, but the whole idea of, man, if we could get this to work, it would really change things. So stick with your moonshot. If you get a shot, you should take it.
I guess what I'm hearing from you too, though, is this stick-to-itiveness, this grit as Angela Duckworth's kind of idea of grit, where you have some talent and hard work, you get skill, and hard work, you get achievement, but with achievement and optimism and hard work and perseverance, you'll ultimately get success. But the underlying sort of root of this is hard work and being able to just stay at it. And I know with startups, there's a lot of volatility. You have to be agile, so, and you can't give up, right? Because if you give up, then you're out of the game. You got to stay in the game, right?
Yep. You got to keep spinning that Rubik's Cube and finding a new way to get the sides to line up. And it's really just about, are you willing to keep spinning it? Because if you do, you find a way. But if you stop, you'll never get there.
That's right. Or a friend of mine says, no, that's just a yes with conditions, right? That's Anthony Stefan. So
that's awesome.
So thank you. And that's Anthony Stefan. He's a YPOer. So thank you again for coming in and sharing your experiences with our audience.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you.